Welcome to our exploration of the top creepy places in Rhode Island, the smallest state in the nation, yet a place where history and the supernatural are densely layered, almost inseparable. Founded by dissenters and visionaries, Rhode Island has always been a haven for those living on the edge of accepted reality. Its colonial villages, salt-stained harbors, and ancient forests have seen centuries of unrest, both human and, some say, not entirely human. Beneath Rhode Island's postcard charm lies a soil thick with secrets. Here, the past lingers, and every weathered mansion seems to pulse with unresolved stories. This is the land that gave birth to H.P. Lovecraft, the master of cosmic horror, whose nightmares still echo through Providence's crooked lanes and forgotten cemeteries. Tonight, we follow in his shadow, exploring the real haunted places and urban legends that inspired, and perhaps even surpassed, the horrors of fiction. Before we enter the realm of the unknown, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss out as we uncover the mysteries of creepy places. Remember to like, share, and comment below with your own tales of the supernatural. Number 5. Slater Mill, Pawtucket, Rhode Island. On the banks of the Blackstone River stands Slater Mill, a relic of brick and timber that marks the birthplace of the American Industrial Revolution. Built in 1793 by Samuel Slater, this was the first successful water-powered cotton spinning mill in the United States, an innovation that transformed Pawtucket from a sleepy colonial town into a crucible of industry. The original mill, now preserved as a National Historic Landmark, anchors a complex that includes the Wilkinson Mill and the Sylvanus Brown House. For nearly 2 centuries, thousands labored here, men, women, and children, some as young as 7, working long hours among roaring machines. Accidents were frequent. Fingers lost to spinning frames, fatal falls, and even drownings in the river became part of the mill's hidden ledger, a legacy of suffering that, some say, has never quite left. It's that legacy that gives Slater Mill its reputation as one of New England's most haunted sites. Staff, visitors, and investigators have reported a spectrum of unexplained phenomena. The most persistent is the apparition of a young girl, believed to be one of the many child laborers who worked and died here in the early 1800s. She's often seen darting between the ancient machinery, her laughter or cries echoing in the empty spinning room. During a 2010 Ghost Hunters investigation, TAP's co-founders Grant Wilson and Jason Hawes recorded the sound of light footsteps and what they described as the giggle of a child, even though the building was empty for the night. The mill's upper floors and weaving room are notorious for sudden, bone-chilling cold spots. Paranormal teams have documented dramatic EMF spikes around the original looms and spinning frames, areas where, according to historical records, the most serious injuries occurred. One investigator from the team Rise Up Paranormal reported in 2014, "We watched our temperature gauge drop 15 degrees in a matter of seconds, and then heard what sounded like a child's voice calling. The basement is a focal point for darker activity. In the early years, this area was used for machinery repairs and storage, often by candlelight. Workers told stories of seeing shadowy figures moving just beyond the reach of their lanterns. In modern times, docents have described the sensation of being watched, and several have reported hearing the heavy slam of the old iron door, even when no one else was in the building. During another TAPS investigation, the sound of the door slamming was captured on audio, and a video camera recorded a shadow crossing the far wall, only to disappear as investigators approached. The Wilkinson Mill, just next door, has its own share of stories. Staff have heard the rhythmic clack of machinery starting up on its own, despite the power being off. The scent of pipe tobacco lingers in certain rooms, a nod to the mill's 19th century machinists. One guide recounted being alone in the machine shop when she felt a cold, small hand grip hers. She turned, expecting to see a child from a tour group, but found herself alone. There are also frequent reports of shadow figures peering from the windows after dark, and lights flickering on in rooms that have been locked for the night. The mill's guest logs are filled with accounts of visitors who felt sudden dizziness, chills, or the overwhelming sensation of not being alone. Slater Mill's haunted reputation is so well established that it now hosts regular ghost tours and overnight investigations, drawing paranormal enthusiasts from across the country. Every year, new stories are added to its history. Unexplained voices, physical sensations, and occasionally, apparitions caught in photographs or on video. Would you walk these floors after midnight, knowing what's been seen and heard here for more than 2 centuries? Number 4. Belcourt Castle, Newport, Rhode Island. Belcourt Castle rises behind wrought iron gates on Newport's Bellevue Avenue, less a mansion than a fortress of eccentricity and secrets. Construction began in 1891 for Oliver Hazard Perry Belmont, a millionaire heir with a taste for the unusual. Designed by Richard Morris Hunt, the 50,000 square foot chateau blends French Gothic, Renaissance, and English styles. Belmont's obsession with horses shaped the building's very layout. The entire first floor was originally a carriage house and stables, with his own bedroom perched above the horses. After Belmont's death in 1908, the castle shifted through a string of owners, each adding their own quirks and layers of legend. The Tinney family, who bought Belcourt in 1956, would become both its restorers and the chief chroniclers of its hauntings. Harley Tinney, who lived in the castle for over 50 years, cataloged not just the antiques and relics in its halls, but the supernatural guests who seemed to come with them. The hauntings at Belcourt are as specific as they are persistent. The castle's infamous cursed chairs, a pair of 16th century Gothic throne chairs, are said to repel anyone who sits in them. According to Harley Tinney, dozens of visitors reported feeling invisible hands push them up, sudden chills, or a wave of nausea. In a 2008 interview with the Providence Journal, Tinney recounted how a psychic refused to sit in the chairs, declaring them occupied. The castle's ballroom is another hotspot. Staff and guests have described hearing footsteps pacing the empty upper balcony and seeing shadowy figures dart between the massive stained glass windows. The phenomenon is so common that the Tinneys kept a ghost log for visitors to record their experiences. One entry from 1992 describes a guest feeling a cold hand grip my shoulder as she stood alone in the ballroom at night. The chapel, built to house the Tinneys' collection of religious relics, has its own share of stories. Guides have reported flickering lights, the scent of incense with no source, and even the sound of chanting in Latin. In 2001, a group from the Atlantic Paranormal Society, TAPS, the team behind TV's Ghost Hunters, conducted an overnight investigation at Belcourt. They recorded unexplained electromagnetic spikes and captured EVPs of faint music and muffled voices, even after the building was cleared. Perhaps the most chilling account comes from Harley Tinney herself. She described in multiple interviews seeing a hooded, monk-like figure gliding through the Gothic dining room, only to vanish into a wall. Other staff members have reported similar sightings, always in the same area, always at night. Artifacts brought into Belcourt seem to bring their own energy. A suit of armor in the main hall is said to be haunted by the spirit of a medieval knight. Guests have reported hearing heavy metallic footsteps and the sound of a sword being drawn, even when the room is empty. The castle's haunted reputation became so established that, for decades, the Tinneys offered nightly ghost tours. Visitors came from across the country, drawn by stories of cold spots, disembodied voices, and apparitions. The castle's official literature documents dozens of guest reports: cold hands grabbing ankles, a woman in white glimpsed on the grand staircase, and lights turning on in locked, empty rooms. Belcourt Castle is no ordinary mansion. It is a living museum of eccentric ambition, layered with stories of the supernatural, each one recorded, retold, and for some, relived again and again. Would you dare to sit in the cursed chairs or walk Belcourt's echoing halls after dark? Number 3. Graduate Hotel Providence, formerly the Biltmore. Standing at 11 Dorrance Street in downtown Providence, the Graduate Hotel, known for most of its existence as the Biltmore, has been a city landmark since 1922. Built at the height of the Roaring Twenties, the hotel was financed by Johann Leis Weisskopf, a New York hotelier whose rumored ties to occult societies have fueled a century of dark speculation. Its opening was a major event, drawing crowds to marvel at its 18 stories, grand marble lobby, and rooftop ballroom with panoramic city views. During Prohibition, the Biltmore quickly became a magnet for the city's elite, bootleggers, and underworld figures. The hotel's basement speakeasy, secret tunnels, and private meeting rooms gave rise to countless rumors of vice, corruption, and even ritual activity. According to local legend, and repeated in sources like the Providence Journal, Weisskopf's original vision included spaces for private gatherings that some say were anything but ordinary. The Biltmore survived the Great Depression, but not without tragedy. On October 29, 1929, the day after the infamous stock market crash, a wealthy businessman is said to have leapt from the hotel's 14th floor. To this day, guests report seeing a figure falling past their windows, only to vanish before hitting the ground, a ghost known as the man who falls forever. The hotel's reputation as a haunt only grew. Throughout the 20th century, staff and guests reported unexplained phenomena, doors opening and closing on their own, the sound of laughter and music from empty ballrooms, and sudden cold spots in the upper floors and basement. The Biltmore's guest book includes names like F. Scott Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong. In more recent decades, the hotel's haunted legacy has become part of its brand. The American Hotel and Lodging Association named it America's Most Haunted Hotel in 2000. Paranormal investigators, including the New England Ghost Project, have documented cold spots, flickering lights, and unexplained electronic malfunctions. In a 2022 Providence Journal piece, longtime staff described the sensation of being watched and doors slamming shut in unoccupied corridors. One of the most chilling accounts comes from a TripAdvisor review. I tried to brush off the stories until I was awoken at 5 a.m. to the sound of a woman sobbing, painfully loud and growing louder, right outside my door. When I opened it, the hallway was empty and silent. A persistent legend also tells of a woman in red, seen gliding through the corridors and vanishing near the elevators. Some say she was a guest who died in the 1940s. Others believe she's much older, a remnant of the hotel's earliest, most secretive gatherings. After nearly a century as the Biltmore, the hotel was restored and rebranded as the Graduate Providence in 2019, but its haunted reputation endures. The original Art Deco details remain, and so it seems, do the echoes of its past. Today, it's a blend of historic grandeur and modern style, where the line between history and haunting is always thin. Would you check in for the night, knowing the stories that linger in these halls? Number 2. Nathanael Greene Homestead, Spell Hall. The Nathanael Greene Homestead, called Spell Hall, stands at 50 Taft Street in Coventry, Rhode Island. Built in 1770 by Nathanael Greene himself, this 2.5-story colonial house originally overlooked 83 acres of open meadow and woodland, sloping east toward the Pawtuxet River. Greene, born in 1742, was raised as a Quaker and trained as an ironmaster at his family's forge before becoming one of the most important generals in the American Revolution. His home here functioned as both family residence and a wartime headquarters. Spell Hall's history is documented in Greene's own letters, which reference the house by name. During the Revolution, the homestead was a hub of activity, housing not only Greene's family, but also soldiers, refugees, and during the winter of 1775, serving as a makeshift hospital for smallpox patients. 4 men died at the homestead that winter and are buried in the family cemetery down the hill, their graves marked by fieldstones. The interior of the house remains largely intact from the 18th century, with 4 rooms on either side of a central hall on each of the 2 main floors. Restoration efforts in the 1920s and 1990s have preserved original features, including paneled fireplaces and early paint colors. The first bedroom on the right as you ascend the stairs is believed to have been used by Nathanael, and later his brother Jacob, who inherited the property after the Greenes moved south in 1783. The cemetery on the property is another tangible link to the past. The first burial was Margaret Greene, daughter of Jacob and Margaret Greene, in 1786. Alongside family members, 4 Revolutionary War soldiers are interred after dying of smallpox while being nursed at the homestead. But Spell Hall's legacy isn't just in its bricks and timbers. Over centuries, it has become one of Rhode Island's most investigated haunted sites. The stories here are not vague folklore. They're specific, persistent, and surprisingly well documented. Museum staff and visitors have reported footsteps on the upper floor when the building was empty. Doors have slammed shut with no breeze or visible cause, sometimes in full view of tour groups. In a 2012 interview with the Warwick Beacon, then museum manager John Perillo described hearing distinct footsteps and the heavy thud of boots when he was alone in the house. The most commonly reported apparition is a woman in colonial dress, seen at the main staircase or looking out from the upstairs windows. While some believe she's Caddy Littlefield Greene, there's never been a confirmed identity. In the late 1990s, volunteer guide Susan Taylor and 2 guests separately reported seeing a pale, silent woman on the stairs, each describing the same appearance in period clothing. Unexplained metallic sounds have been recorded in the cellar and grounds. Paranormal groups, including the New England Ghost Project, have captured what sounds like a blacksmith's hammer striking an anvil, even though the forge has been gone for over a century. In 2019, lead investigator Ron Kolek recorded a male voice repeatedly saying, "Not yet, not yet," during an EVP session in the empty main hall. Sudden drops in temperature and overwhelming feelings of sadness are often reported in Greene's old study and the upstairs bedrooms. Former caretaker Linda O'Rourke, who lived on site in the early 2000s, kept a log of her experiences, noting a wave of crushing sorrow that would vanish as soon as she left the room. Poltergeist activity has been witnessed as well. In 2007, during a school field trip, a heavy colonial chair slid several feet across the floor in front of a volunteer and several children. The incident was recorded in the museum's daily log, and no physical explanation was found. There's also a persistent legend that Greene himself felt uneasy in the house after the war, reportedly telling a neighbor, "These walls remember more than I wish them to." Later residents suffered a string of misfortunes, including the fatal fall of a child from the attic stairs, a spot now considered a cold zone by staff and investigators. Some locals believe the house sits on an ancient Native American path, and that the land itself is restless. The property is a regular stop for regional paranormal teams, who have documented electromagnetic spikes, shadow figures, and photographic anomalies, light distortions, orbs, and unexplained forms. Today, Spell Hall stands as a rare intersection of American history and persistent supernatural activity. Would you spend a night at Spell Hall, knowing the history and the stories that linger here? Number 1. Rose Island, Newport, Rhode Island. A mile off Newport's bustling waterfront, Rose Island rises out of Narragansett Bay, a solitary outpost battered by wind and tide, where the past is never far away. At its heart stands the Rose Island Lighthouse. Built in 1870, this brick and granite structure has guided ships through fog and storm for generations. But for all its charm and panoramic views, Rose Island is a place where the past never seems to fully let go. The lighthouse was manned continuously from 1870 until 1970, when modern navigation made its keepers obsolete. For a century, families lived in isolation here, raising children, tending to the beacon, and weathering some of New England's fiercest storms. But Rose Island's story goes deeper than the lighthouse. Long before the beacon was built, this rocky spit was chosen for its strategic importance. In 1798, the U.S. government constructed Fort Hamilton here, one of Rhode Island's earliest coastal defenses. Its stone ramparts and gun batteries, built to deter British ships, still haunt the island's wooded interior. Soldiers manned the post through the War of 1812 and beyond, leaving behind graffiti in the stone, and some say, echoes of their lonely watches. Even today, visitors report the distant sound of marching boots and shouted orders drifting across the parade ground on foggy nights. The island's military purpose returned in full force during World War II. In the 1940s, the U.S. Navy transformed Rose Island into part of the Newport Torpedo Station, filling it with barracks, bunkers, and ammunition stores. Hundreds of sailors and civilian workers rotated through, testing and storing torpedoes for the Atlantic Fleet. The remains of these wartime buildings still dot the landscape, crumbling, overgrown, but never quite silent. It's from these layers of history that Rose Island draws its haunted reputation. The most frequently reported presence is Charles Curtis, lighthouse keeper from 1887 to 1918. According to the Rose Island Lighthouse Foundation and dozens of overnight guest logs, Curtis's devotion to the island has outlasted his mortal years. Guests describe the sound of heavy boots pacing the floors, doors opening and closing on their own, and the distinct aroma of pipe smoke in empty rooms. Some have seen a tall, bearded man in period clothing gazing out to sea, only to watch him vanish when approached. In a 2016 Providence Journal interview, lighthouse manager Charlotte Johnson described waking to footsteps and the sensation of someone standing at the end of her bed. "You know you're alone out here," she said, "but sometimes it doesn't feel that way." Other guests have reported hearing keys jangling and whispered voices, always after midnight, always when the island is deserted. One guest in 2018 wrote in the official log, "Woke up to footsteps circling the bed. I could hear the floorboards creak, but when I sat up, the room was empty. Later I smelled tobacco, but no one in our party smokes." Paranormal investigators, including the New England Ghost Project, have recorded unexplained EMF spikes near the lamp room and captured faint voices on EVP. One recording picked up a male voice muttering, "Keep the light," a phrase Curtis was known for. The lighthouse's upper landing is notorious for abrupt cold spots, while the kitchen sometimes echoes with the clatter of dishes and the sound of a woman humming, possibly the spirit of Curtis's wife Mary, who lived and died on the island. But the hauntings aren't limited to the lighthouse. The military past of Rhode Island is just as restless. Visitors and overnight keepers have described seeing shadowy figures in World War II-era uniforms patrolling the grounds after dark. In a 2019 interview with the Newport Daily News, a lighthouse volunteer recounted seeing a man in a navy peacoat and white cap walking across the parade ground at dawn, then just fading away into the mist. Paranormal teams have picked up urgent whispers and the metallic clang of doors in the old bunkers. The sharp scent of gun oil or cordite sometimes lingers in the air, especially near the ammunition stores. Some guests have heard distant gunfire or felt a wave of dread near the torpedo bunkers, particularly on stormy nights. Others have seen lights moving along the shoreline, only to vanish, phenomena attributed to the watchmen who once patrolled the island's perimeter. One persistent story involves a Navy cook who died in a tragic accident in the 1940s. Guests have reported the smell of frying bacon or coffee brewing in the early morning hours, long after the kitchen was abandoned. Today, Rhode Island is a living museum, its lighthouse restored, its fortifications crumbling, its stories alive in every gust of wind. The sense of isolation only amplifies the effect. With the last ferry gone and the sun setting behind Newport, the lighthouse stands alone, surrounded by water, history, and for some, the unmistakable feeling of being watched. Would you spend a night alone on Rhode Island, listening for footsteps in the lighthouse, watching the fog roll over the old fort, and wondering who, or what, still keeps watch here? Rhode Island, with its compact borders, is a state built on contradiction and resilience. Founded by outcasts and free thinkers, it was the first colony to declare independence and the last to ratify the Constitution. Its harbors fueled the Revolution, and its rivers powered the birth of American industry. Generations have carved their stories into its landscape. Mill towns, fishing villages, and the families whose names have been here for generations all bear the marks of ambition, conflict, and survival. Yet beneath the surface, Rhode Island carries an undercurrent that's hard to ignore. In a place this old, history doesn't always rest quietly. Stories of the unexplained move through neighborhoods and families, woven into the fabric of everyday life. Here, the past is more than memory. It's something you can sense in the air, in the architecture, and sometimes in the shadows that linger just out of sight. This has been Tyler. Thanks for joining me on this chilling exploration of Rhode Island and its creepiest places. Which of these locations would you dare to explore? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let us know if you've experienced any supernatural encounters in the Ocean State. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Join us for more chilling adventures. Until next time, stay curious and stay creepy. Bye for now.